We are slightly over time, but I would really like to give you people the opportunity to ask a question or two, if you wish. Hopefully there is somebody there with a microphone, so please make yourself known if you'd like to ask a question of the panelists by raising your hand. And there must be some burning questions for her. Okay, I'd like to just ask a question myself, if I may, and I'd like to direct this at you, Marnie, initially. One thing that's always interested me about, and I've spent a lot of my career on mining projects in Europe, is the not in my backyard sentiment that is expressed by some communities in some parts of Europe, thankfully much less prevalent here in Serbia. How can you change that perception working here in the Balkans?
Thanks, it's an excellent question. The first point that I'd like to make is there were some references earlier about a social licence to operate. Within Rio Tinto, we actually are phrasing that as a partner to operate, and it's an approach that's underpinned across all of our operations around the world. So what does that mean in terms of communities, and specifically to your question here in the Balkans? We have an approach where we engage early and we engage in a conversation with those local communities to really understand what the concerns are from that community, but also what the opportunities are. So it's a conversation that in any partnership, it's about understanding each other's position and how do you find a position where you can generate shared value and good outcomes for both of those partners. So if we turn to Yada there, specifically we've been engaging very closely with the municipality in Loznica, having really regular, and I would frame it as a very positive relationship with that municipality. And we engage, we've got a good team there that are engaging daily, weekly on specific topics. To really understand how we can support for the future. And if you think about the opportunities for that community, it's around employment, economic growth and business development in the future. So really understanding really early what that could look like. So we frame that and we go on that journey together. So very important, but it's definitely around a partnership, not necessarily a license, because when you think of license, you gain a license and then you go. A partnership is enduring. And goes further. And to the point that Peter made earlier, another approach for Rio Tinto as well is to think about closure even before we open. So it's a very crucial part of the way that we think about developing deposits is there's a process for development, but having a very clear plan before we develop about how we close and how we do that responsibly.
And in fact, yesterday evening at the Canadian ambassador's question and answer, we talked about the importance in Serbia where many communities understand mining, but your project is in an area that hasn't really been subject to much mining. So interesting. Velko, could I turn to you as well, because your project is located right next to an area that's been subject to mining activity for 100+ years. How do you think that's affected the way the communities view the proposals that you're progressing?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we're lucky enough, to be in a district where mining is, people know about mining. Most likely some of the members of the family or extended family work in mining and have been working in mining for a long time. But that is, kind of like a double-edged sword. The difference that we are actually experiencing there is that we're the private company, which is a new thing in that area, especially private foreign-owned company in that area. And I think mining in general in Serbia, it is at first, and it is a lot of education that needs to happen to learn what it is, the ownership of natural resources, what is the private ownership of natural resources. In Bor, we engaged a lot with the community, from the even days of exploration. early exploration. I would say we had an info center open in a downtown Bor, where people can come and learn about the project, learn everything about the project, and we can share the information. We were then extended where one day per week we would go to local village in 3 local villages around our project, where we would be in their local local building, where we would also talk about the project, inform them about the project. We of course regularly have a town hall meetings with the local community, where we inform them on the progress of the project and what's happening, and especially now concerning the decline, because this is a big thing, because it is a major development on the project. I would say the major problem and an issue is more on a national level, because of the lack of knowledge of mining, and because of lack of knowledge of what the mining brings to a nation as a whole. It is economic impact, it is a social impact, obviously environmental impact, but it is the benefits of mining and private ownership of mining and the development of a mining project still needs to be widespread. That message needs to be spread nationally, more so than locally.
Quickly, Theo, I've heard you speak in the past about the importance of the exploration stage in terms of community interaction, as it's often the first time that communities come into contact with mining companies. Would you mind just...
Absolutely. Exploration, as I mentioned earlier, you're the first one to basically arrive. You could arrive to greenfields or perhaps old operations, but essentially, it's not the job of the mining company to create a social contract with the local communities. It really is the exploration companies. And if you can do a very good job of building trust with the local community, then that makes it so much more easier for the mining company down the road. And our model is not to actually become a mining company. We want to make discoveries and essentially partner those discoveries and then sell those to the miners who are looking for assets to develop. And there's obviously a very different area of expertise there. But I would say that there's 1,800 exploration companies that are listed in Canada that do work globally, and there's certainly, let's say under 300 mining companies. So the number of people that are involved in exploration is a very large number, and they're out there, and if our community as an exploration community can get behind building those social contracts, that would be, I think, a huge benefit for the mining industry in general, not
Absolutely.
just our sector.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And lastly, Peter, you mentioned having gone into communities that had been affected by tailings legacy, for example. How did the communities react to you coming in and talking about starting up mining again?
I suspect I have a slightly different perspective, and that comes from one of my other duties. I'm chairman of one of the last 4 operating hard rock mining operations in the UK, and we happen to be located in arguably the UK's most important national park. And we've operated there since before the national park. And I can say, if I look at the local community, 25% of them are pro-mining, supportive of what we do, and generally will buy me a beer. 25% of them would be very happy if I got completely run over by the bus, and we didn't, and they would be driving that bus. And 50% of them are, I wouldn't say open-minded, but they sit in the middle. Now, I would encapsulate all the comments that have just been made, because I would encapsulate that in the 50% as fear of the unknown. And what our duty is right from the beginning is to be transparent and explain, because a mining operation, wherever it is, changes the community because of the scale. And the perception is it will be for the worse. People are scared of change. And we have to get over the fear of the unknown by education, by dialogue and explaining. And to my mind, we live around most mining boardroom tables with CPR, corporate social responsibility. And I can assure you the number of conversations I've had in many jurisdictions is, that's very important. What are we going to do? Well, it's important, we'll chuck a lot of money at it. Great. What are we then going to do? Oh, we haven't got a clue. And that's the traditional view of the mining the mining board is. And the important thing is it's not chuck a lot of money at it. It comes back to understanding how we can educate, train, and manage change in terms of our operation and overcome the fear of the unknown. And the number of people I've presented to, particularly in the National Park, when you talk to them a little bit more about mining, about the fact you can't do without it, and at the end they say, it's not actually as bad as I thought it was. And that would be my view.
Okay, thank you, Peter, and a good way to bring to an end this session. So I think Alexander Vulovic is chairing the next session. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to our speakers.